Welcome to Fractured. This is one of our summer specials, a series of short episodes cut out of season 3. We hope watching this short one will encourage you to watch a longer one on the topic. You will find a link to it in the show notes.
We kind of wanted to talk about what is life like if you did make it to the UK, you did survive the Channel crossing, and now you're in what is your life like in the UK in the process of trying to stay or potentially being someone who would be sent to Rwanda if this policy is enacted and put into play. But what is life like for an asylum seeker in the UK? And in terms of the detention centers or the spaces where people are kept, what could you inform our viewers about this general experience?
Sure. Okay, so you don't have a right to work if you're an asylum seeker. This has been a thing of contention, and people have tried to change it, but it still remains the case that you can't work. You get very limited allowance every month. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's very, very low. You're accommodated in, it depends what your situation or circumstance is. There's different accommodations. People have been put up in hotels, in former military bases. Some have been put on the Bibi Stockholm, this kind of floating barge, which was criticised by many rights groups and charities, and people in the local area as well, in Dorset, where it's currently is. And I mean, like many places, it's a kind of process of waiting. If your asylum is being processed, and obviously there has been varying degrees of success in processing asylum claims. They're taking quite long, as I understand. And I mean, I think this was always what people were asking. I think people are always very shocked when they arrive in the UK about what life is like as an asylum seeker, because it's not this kind of land of human rights and an amazing standard of living if you are in that situation. And I think it's very disheartening for people when they've travelled so far and been through so much, and they arrive and they're in the situation. Often the levels of accommodation are not great. I mean, the Bibi Stockholm, which is this kind of big barge that was used in the Netherlands until it was shut down, is now still accommodating asylum seekers, but it's had numerous horrible instances, such as Legionella's disease was initially found on the boat and people had to be temporarily moved off. A guy who was put on there committed suicide, reportedly. I mean, that seems to be what happened. He was from Albania. So it can be very isolating, and the UK has this hostile environment. I mean, it was a policy specifically created under Theresa May, I think, former Prime Minister, when she was Home Secretary, termed it the hostile environment. I might be wrong on sort of attributing it to her as the creator, but anyway, definitely things got worse since then. The idea is to make it is difficult a place to live. And then obviously we have detention centres, which is where you're put if you have an issue with your immigration status. We have, I think we're the only place in Europe where we have an unlimited amount of time you can be put in detention unless you're pregnant. You have Yarl's Wood, which I think is just for female detainees. But I mean, there's always been awful stories coming out of these places. There's various different security companies which are contracted out to run them, and there's been various allegations over the years of human rights abuses happening. We've had people separate to the detention centres, as I mentioned, accommodated in camps, former military barracks, which sort of rings similar to some of the stuff happening in Greece again. And again, the conditions there aren't amazing. So it's difficult. And I think that was always something that people would say, especially when you met them in Calais, like, I can't wait to go, you know, what's it like, you know, the UK, it's this great place, you know, because they've had so many bad experiences along the way. They've been beaten up by so many different security services in every different country, that they have this vision. And I would feel the same of like, I can't wait to get to that place across the water. I can see it and it's going to be amazing. And life isn't amazing, unfortunately. And particularly being denied the right to work whilst you're seeking asylum feels very kind of manifestly cruel. And so, yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult situation.
Yeah, I mean, there's like this laundry list of these places, and that have these horror show experiences that people have gone through, these investigative reports. And one that stood out to me that was really terrible was Brookhouse, where someone, BBC Panorama and The Independent, were doing these investigative researches. There was some whistleblowers in the space, and this is a couple of years ago, but it was caught on camera, people doing these types of like really, really aggressive physical behavior towards people.
Yeah.
In one instance, some guy was choking someone, screaming at him, and I quote, "You fucking piece of shit, I'm going to put you to fucking sleep." And then another one is mocking Drago, the big Russian boxer from Rocky IV, and looking at someone who's injured and is in need of medical care, and he says, if he dies, he dies. And this is like, you know, years ago. It's continued. There are instances like this all the time. And the companies that were once there, this G4S that was in charge of these spaces, they're like, oh, well, they're gone now, so we don't have to worry about this. But then they put in a company like Serco, and they are guilty of it as well in multiple spaces. And they just signed new 8-year deals this year. Yeah. It's kind of insane.
Yeah. I mean, I always struggle to recall specific reports because there's just, like you said, so many. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult to know what to say about that because this has just been going, I mean, the whole detention issue, particularly the detention centres, is such a big issue. It obviously, detaining people indefinitely is a huge cost as well. So it always seems quite strange as to why you would do that. It seems, again, to be a sort of a way of deterrence. Obviously, some people would argue there's security concerns, but for most of these people who are in these detention centres, it just seems to be like genuinely horror stories about their experiences and have committed no offence apart from not having the right passport or the right papers or whatever. But yeah, these reports have been going on for years, and it's just a round table of different security companies which then take over or whatever, and it's all the same thing with a different label on it.